Good day, everyone, and happy Monday. Welcome to Money Monday on the Juice Radio and Talk Show. I'm Executive Pastor Tawana Grant. I am so excited to be with you on today as we continue in our series on cash flow management. Today's topic, we're talking about cash flow contingency planning. What do we do just in case? And so I want to encourage you today to get ready with your pens and pencils for lunchtime learning as we go forward in our contingency planning for cash flow management. It's Money Monday. Get ready. Here we go.
Welcome to the Juice Radio Talk Show. 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 Reality TV, church reviews. Let's talk happy love and marriage lifestyle. Come and talk with us. Come and share with us. Come and laugh with us. Come on and pray with us.
Regina and Clovis, special guests. You should be following your lead. Bless. Subscribe on YouTube. Listen on podcasts. We live on IG and Facebook. This episode is sponsored by Truth and Triumph Ministries.
Good afternoon again. This is Pastor Grant. We are so excited today. We are continuing in our series on cash flow management. But specifically for today, we are talking about how do you do contingency planning for cash flow. And so what we want to do is understand what is contingency planning. That means contingency is a plan of action that we put in place is designed to help a business determine how to respond to future events. So we haven't had the event yet, but we want to be good stewards, and so that we plan ahead. We want to be prepared so that in case the event does occur, we already have a plan in place that can help us to respond to changes in our projected cash flow. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about cash flow management. And now a part of the series is that we're talking about how do we plan for contingencies? How do we set ourselves, as they say today, for our plan B? How do we get ready for plan B if something does happen? And it's the same as what it says in the scripture. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans that I have for you." That lets us know that we have a God that plans. He plans ahead. He already knows what our future holds for us. So according to God's way of operating, we want to plan as well. We want to plan ahead. And then it says also in Proverbs 13:11, wealth is gained, rather, hastily dwindled. So wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little increases it. And so what is that telling us? That tells us that a wise person gathers little by little, and you get understanding, you get clarity. And so you learn how to manage it, and you learn how to maneuver it. And so when we manage things well, we're able to increase and get more, right? And so we be faithful over little, he'll make us ruler over much. And so we want to encourage you today that this is your opportunity to do some of your contingency planning to get ready for cash flow. How many know cash flow changes? Some of the businesses that we're in as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a leader, we have seasons and cycles that we go through. And so there are opportunities as we manage, as we understand what that season looks like for us. That's the way we want to plan our engagement. When we know it is our busy season coming up, this is our time when we really want to run. We want to put out as much produce, as much inventory as we can, because it's normally high demand season. But when you go to your high season, sometimes you also have a dip depending on your type of business or service that you provide, or the tools that you are distributing, what you're giving out, your product. You may have what that cycle goes in a dip. And so sometimes you plan for that dip, which is what we'd like to do, right? We've already talked about evaluating your business. What are those throughputs when money is coming through? And then what are those areas that you might hit when money may be shortened, maybe less? You want to be ready for those, but there are times when you just haven't prepared for it. You expected one thing, but something else happened. And so that does happen in business. That happens in life. Some things just happen. And so what you want to do, though, is be a prepared leader so that when certain things that you pretty much can predict. Here's some things that when you're in your business, some of the things you can predict. One thing is the material may change. The prices of material may change. One thing is that the ability of resources to be available to support you and to help you may change. What do you do in some of those instances so that it can hit your contingency plan and not be a crisis? Crisis is when you haven't given it any awareness. You haven't prepared for it. You're not balanced in a way so that if it does happen, you can react in a way that can offset the immediate impacts of it. So we want to operate from a place of having a contingency plan. I always think about it when I think about the plane that landed in the river, in the Hudson River, and the pilot, they tried to tell him that you had a crash landing. No, he said, no, I didn't. I had a water landing. I planned for that. When I was in the emergency, I pivoted to what my experience told me is the best thing to do in this case of an emergency. And that was to do a planned land watering. And so even in your business, while things might happen, it is not on your roadmap. It is not on your plan to have this happen. You've taken account for it in your contingency plan so that it is not a crisis. It is something that you and your team can immediately pivot to and put into action. So what we want to do today is just talk about some of those things that you want to do as you're looking at a contingency plan, as you're looking at what may be necessary, right? What are some of those things that is necessary for your particular business? What are some of those things that you might want to consider? Because we do create a task list. And so this is very important. When you're creating a SWOT analysis, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, your threats that come in your way. What are those things that you've already crafted in your plan that could be an opportunity or a threat to your business? And so that's really where you start to list these out. And so that you can list out your risks. What are your risks? And then prioritize them by likelihood and severity, because it makes a difference. What is the likelihood that this particular issue would happen? And this is the one that you want to take attention to. And then in addition to that, it's two-pronged. How severe would it impact your business if it does occur? And so that's how you're going to rank and prioritize the risk that could jeopardize your business solvency, that could jeopardize your cash flow. Again, you want to look at the risk. What is the likelihood that it could happen? And then how significant of an impact it would have to your business if it did occur. And so these are the ones that you do, and you want to make sure that you rank them so that you have the opportunity to be able to have a prepared plan. You're not pivoting haphazardly. You're not maneuvering to something new because you did not expect it. But what would you do if something critical asset in your business broke down? What will you do if your main machinery is no longer available? That's one of the examples if you're running a production business. What happens? Do you have mechanics on site who can do maybe some initial purview of the equipment to solve for it without having to reach out? Would you then have a maintenance agreement with the manufacturer of the equipment so that you can easily pivot to them to come on site and to help you to remediate whatever that problem is? Do you have an alternate piece of equipment that you can either rent or lease or borrow for a period of time so that you can still stay in business? These are the kind of things that you want to consider when you are crafting this particular list. When you are crafting this list of risks that could likelihood that could occur, and to the significance of the impacts, and you're now ranking them and prioritizing. These are the things that you want to consider. Also, you also want to consider, because that's going to impact your cash flow. These are the things that are going to impact your ability to sell your product if you no longer have the tool that you use. Another item that you want to consider is not only your equipment, and again, it depends on the type of business that you're in. Depending on your business, you could have a number of equipments that are considered likelihood to break down and significant to your business. And you need to address how you're going to handle each one, because we pray adventure, all of them don't break down at the same time, but there is an opportunity that you might have with each one. And so you want to list them individually and separately. All right. Welcome this afternoon, Bianca. Glad to have you with us. Thank you so much. So we want to make sure that everyone remembers some of those items in your business as a tool that you use to leverage to service your product. If they break down, what will you do? Another way that you want to consider for a potential risk is also the people. What if, for instance, you have a specific single-threaded person who has the knowledge and experience to operate in a certain capacity in your business, and you can't live without them? That is a huge, significant risk to your business. What is the likelihood that they may leave and go to another competitor, or maybe even start their own business, or maybe they have to leave for whatever reason and they have to quit? what would you do? This is something you want to put on your contingency plan. One of the things I try to do personally is not to be single threaded in areas where I have that role is a necessity. There's some roles in our business, in our innovation, in our opportunity, in our ministry that you can plug and play. There are some roles that can be facilitated by a number of skill sets, but there are some roles that they need a specificity, that they sometimes need a certification. Sometimes they need credentials. Sometimes they need a certain amount of experience in order to work that particular tool or to execute that type of line of business. And so therefore, that is an item that should go on your risk list for contingency. How do you plan? How do you plan against that so that your business stay in operation? And so that would be a likelihood that it could happen. And then it would be a significant impact. So that is one of the ones that you want to prioritize high on your cash flow contingency planning, because that can significantly impact your cash flow if you're unable to execute, and that role is critical to your business. If that role is critical to what you do in your line of business, in your operation, in your end-to-end servicing, what do you do? Previously, we talked about your third-party vendors and how we may have some vendors who are involved in our business who help us facilitate in a number of ways, but they are an important part of the exchange of getting the product from your company to your customers. What do you do if your vendor goes out of business? How likely is that to happen? And then how significant is it to what you're doing? And that is, again, another one of those items that you want to put on your contingency plan as a potential risk for likelihood and significant impact. What is your fallback plan? How would you address that? So again, a good contingency plan prioritizes the risk an organization could face. It also delegates out that responsibility to members of the response team. So again, if that person is gone, they're not the person fixing the problem. If that equipment is broken, you can't use it. So you have to also have a response team, and that could be yourself as the owner and maybe some of your key personnel. It could be some of your key resources. It could be people you've already engaged with and you've let them know that you're going to be my go-to person if anything happens in this particular incident. But these are the resource plan persons that participate with you, so that if something does happen, you can pivot to them, the response team, and they can help you in getting things executed. And then again, and increase the likelihood that the company will make a full recovery. When you have this contingency plan in hand, when you have your risk evaluated by likelihood and significant to impact, and you have your response team who have helped you craft this plan. This is another thing. Don't try and do everything in silo. You need to have at least 2 or 3 people you can trust. Let me just say that. It is hard to do anything alone. Even in the scripture, he sent the disciples out 2 by 2. It is easier when you have a partner, someone you can trust, someone you can rely on, who's proven themselves to have the vision that you have, who've proven themselves to be a supporter of where you're going, and that you're not in competition. We're trying to get there together, and they are also aware of your blind spots. It is good. Let me just say that. It is good to have people who know where you're weak. And so that's why it's important to have the right people with you, because when they know where you are weak, your areas of a lack of strength, not that you don't have some strength, but where you need enablement, they can help watch out for your blind spot, and they can remind you when you're making decisions or when you're doing things. Perhaps like myself, you're very soft-hearted, and you might need somebody who can help you. Hey, take your blinders off. You're thinking very myopic. You're looking through that one little lens, and you need to be looking at the big picture so that you can see the impacts all the way across. Or you might have where you have a tendency to perhaps be very optimistic. Then you need a 10th man. That's what I call them. A person who has that eyesight, not that they're negative or Debbie Downer, but they have the eyesight to be able to say, yeah, that is the best case scenario. No, I'm in agreement with you. We want that to happen. But what would we do if it doesn't? You need to have somebody as a resource, as a mentor on your response team, or someone who's working within your business who can help you look at these blind spots and help you craft your contingency plan. Because if you're in business, if you're in ministry, if you're in any type of alignment of an organization, you say, I don't need to craft a contingency plan. You're living in a fantasy world. A contingency plan is always needed. What do you pivot to when things don't go as planned, because life happens and it happens to all of us. And so we want to encourage you today that even in business, don't be discouraged when things happen, because that is just life being life. And so what you have to do as a entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a leader, as a one who is facilitating the operation of an organization, you have to be resilient within yourself to know that just because something happened doesn't mean that I am not on the right track. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Doesn't mean that you're not on the right track. It doesn't mean that you're not doing the right thing. It means that this is an opportunity for you now to look at things from a different lens, for you to give inspection, because you cannot expect what you don't inspect. So sometimes you have to give inspection to what God is doing in the business in this season. And so to manage cash flow. Hi, Tyrinia. Glad to have you with us today. Hello, little lady, my apologies. Glad to have you with us today as well. And so one of the things is cash flow is that you must have a contingency plan because things happen. And the last thing you want to do is start your business, but not have enough planning, not have enough preparation, fortitude, nor have you considered contingency. We've talked about this before, putting money aside so that if in the event of emergency, you have something to pivot to, you have funding that is available, or maybe even you have a line of credit that is readily available for you to access if you need it. And so again, we talked about prioritizing that list, getting that list together of things that you know could happen. Again, not hasn't happened, but things that could happen that could prevent you from moving forward, whatever that business is. And then we also want to create a business impact analysis that will help you. As you talk about what could happen, what is the significance of that particular event occurring? Again, so this is a crucial step really in understanding your business. Most of our issues around how to recover. Because I've been in business, oh my goodness, over decades. And so you have to learn how to recover. And some of that is memory muscle. A lot of that is planning, but also that is experience. And so when you have a plan in place and you have that memory muscle so that you know when you have that incident again, hey, here's what I did the last time. And so sometimes you might have to update your contingency plan based on what has occurred, based on what you just experienced and what you just went through. You learn, because sometimes what we had down as our go-to plan for a particular incident occurring, it may have worked the first time. And then maybe if you had that incident again and it wasn't within your control to prevent it, and it happened again, and then you go to what you have down as your plan, and then that particular activity is no longer applicable because the timing has changed. So you also want to be looking at that as you create your business impact analysis. You want to make sure that you understand what ways to look at a particular event and how you can address them. And in many instances, know this, there's more than one way to solve it. There's more than one way. The old people used to say it's more than one way to skin a cat. And so we want to encourage you today that you may have more than one way to fix it. What is the most efficient for you? And sometimes it's not really efficient. What is the quickest way to get it done? So sometimes the quicker you're back into business, the quicker the tool that may have broke down is back operating, the quicker you can get back to your cash flow. Sometimes it is the replacement of a temporary person. We've seen this before. Sometimes you might have to hire someone as interim until you find the skill set you really want. But you need to have that resource there in order for the cash flow to continue. And so you have to look at it from that perspective when you're writing and crafting your business impact analysis and your contingency plan, because you may have more than one answer. You may have a quick one that can get you back up in business, and then you might have a second answer that you need to execute on to have back into stability. Because sometimes I've had it where I've had to jump in and do things in certain ones of our businesses, but only for a brief period of time until I can find the right resource, until I can find stability back again, until I can find the one who would continue it forward. So sometimes when you're crafting that cash flow contingency planning, look at more than one option, because you may need to address it as a short-term and as the long-term permanent fix. Next, as you're crafting your plan, make sure you identify what are those triggers that will make the plan engage. So we talked about, again, what are those indicators? What are those triggers? Listen, one of the things I found in being proactive is try to look for the trend. You can do this even with resources or with equipment. If you have equipment and you find that it's starting to slow down, used to work fine, now we're having to apply some type of manual maintenance, that is a trigger that you need to start evaluating whether this piece of equipment needs true maintenance to resolve it completely, whether you need to be looking at an alternative, which should be crafted as you're writing your plan in replacement, or whether or not this is the type of equipment you want to continue with. And then maybe you're looking for another way to produce that particular product or service. Okay. So again, look for the triggers. What are the triggers? Sometimes in personnel. Sometimes personnel, they're no longer want to operate with the vision. Maybe there's a lot of tension. Maybe they are slow in delivery. Maybe they're no longer coming in. Maybe they're absent. Maybe the body is there, but their participation has changed. These are some of the triggers that you want to look at even in contingency planning for resources. Because again, you don't want to end up being single-threaded, just having one person and then not being able to deliver on your commitment to your clients. You want to keep your business operating. And so part of cash flow contingency planning is evaluating triggers, looking for patterns, looking for behaviors that could make one of your contingency actions become alive, make you have to pivot to it and set that plan in motion. Then a part of triggers is also design an appropriate response. That's what we're saying. How do I respond to that incident? How do I respond to handling that circumstance with resources or with equipment or with a vendor or with the way that we do business? Maybe it's an operational process and you see that it is breaking down. Now, how do you address it? One of the things as a business owner, one of the things as entrepreneur and innovator is our ability to do the hard decisions. It's necessary. Sometimes it is uncomfortable. So I want to say that when you're having to pivot to a contingency plan, it is not your first posture. It is not what you want to do. It's what you find in yourself having to do in order to maintain the integrity of the business and able to maintain the operational effectiveness of the business. And sometimes it can be a difficult decision to make. I want to encourage you, just because you have a contingency plan and you're writing down what that plan looks like, know this, not every response is going to be one you like, but it's going to be one that's necessary. Not every response is going to be one that everybody will appreciate. But when you craft it with your response team and you talk it through, you gain clarity, they understand why it might be necessary. Sometimes we look in businesses, and I've had this even in corporate America, even in where I operate in, sometimes the business has to craft a right sizing. And sometimes when you're right sizing for the demand and you're trying to also ensure you're maintaining expenses, it requires you to compress down. And that means sometimes people are impacted. It's not the desire for you to do, but it is necessary in the planning for the continuance of the business. For your cash flow to maintain, you can't be sending out more money than what's coming in. And so while that contingency plan may be impactful in ways, again, like I said, you don't always want that to happen, but sometimes it is necessary for the solvency of the business. In order to stay in business, there must be a continuous of cash flow coming in and less going out. When you find that you have more going out in your business, that's your cash flow, and you are out of balance. The intention is to stay in business and make money, meaning more coming in an income stream than going out in payables. And so in that event, there might be times when you have to go to your contingency plan and you have to engage in that to understand, one, where am I being most impacted, right? You go back to the plan, you go back to your business impact analysis, you figure out where and identify where am I being most impacted, and then you have to trigger your contingency plan that, again, may cause you to do some things that are necessary. Lastly, on this particular one, you also want to delegate responsibility clearly and fairly. So in like any other initiative, when you're doing contingency planning, you want to manage it like a project so that it succeed. You don't want to have people that you've delegated to do something that is critical and necessary and then have them drag their feet because it's something they don't want to do. Change is complex. Change can be difficult for people. Sometimes people rather stay in a sinking ship than get out and swim to the shore. Sometimes you have to do some things that will require you to release some things that are not working well so that you can preserve the things that are. Okay? That's part of being a leader. That's part of being one who's in charge and responsible. If you're responsible and accountable, then you're responsible for the integrity of what you committed on. And so that also requires you to have to make the hard decisions. I see this a lot in a lot of different areas of life. It is not always easy, but it's necessary. And I have that too. Sometimes I don't want to say it. Sometimes I don't want to do it, but it's necessary for the integrity of what I committed to. And it is necessary for the integrity of the role that you have. Even as you operate in the ministry, it's necessary for the integrity of the word that is in your life and the light that is shining in your life, that you have to ensure that you hold things fairly and responsibly. Okay? So make the plan. Make the plan. While it might be difficult, it is necessary. Then part of your contingency planning for cash flow is to get buy-in from those resources, from your organization if necessary, and for others who operate in leadership with you. Why? So that you can make sure that the plan is realistic, that it is something that others can execute upon, and so that it can be justifiable. You want to make sure that the decision that you're making, especially when you're pivoting to a contingency plan, that is solid. You don't want to have something broken and shift into a contingency plan that is shaky, because it's not going to fix the problem. It may create even more. So it's very important that as you craft that plan, you vet it out with others. You ensure that it is operating in the capacity that it will give you the lift you need while you resolve the problem. So you want to get the lift by going to the contingency plan, where there's a lift in cost saves, a lift in ensuring you're back to being able to service your customers or your clients, or a lift even in your cash flow. How do I get back to positive cash flow? How do I get back to operating in a manner that keeps the business operating well and effective and efficiently? And then the last thing you want to do with your contingency plan is you want to test it out and assess your plans regularly. How do I do that, Pastor? You want to test it out. So if we're saying that we had an incident to happen or may happen, we want to pivot to the plan so that we see how well the plan works. Sometimes you might even want to do a mock trial of a particular contingency plan. If you're going to engage with a third-party vendor and you're going to have them helping you do certain things in the event of a contingency, you probably want to do a mock contingency to make sure that they are able to do what they said they would do. The last thing we want to do, the very last thing we want to do, is have to pivot to a contingency plan and find out what we said was going to be the answer won't work. You're in the midst of it. You want everything to work because it's necessary at that point. So I hope on today you've gained a lot of information about cash flow, contingency planning, that you are looking into this, that you are crafting that particular plan so that you have something in place, again, in the event that something does happen. And so we'll just cover these 4 points again, that as you craft the plan, 1, make a list of these risks and prioritize them according to the likelihood and the severity. How likely will it happen? How severe is it? 2, create a business impact analysis. You want to understand and step through what would happen if these events did occur. And one way to do that is to look at the company revenue. How is revenue being generated? And then what would I do if generation of revenue starts to decline? Where do I look first? What are those key indicators of areas that could be significantly impacting our cash flow in? Thirdly, making a plan. Looking at triggers. How do I know an incident is about to occur? How can I be proactive, not reactive? How do I get ahead of it so that if I'm ahead of it, I can address it very quickly, or maybe even prevent it from happening, or maybe even prevent it from happening so significantly because I caught it early. Also, part of that is designing the appropriate response in your plan, and then delegating out responsibility for those on the response team who will be helping you to execute. Lastly, and fourthly, rather, is to get buy-in, make sure the team is agreed, make sure the team has justified what needs to happen, and they are also in agreement that that is a good way to pivot if necessary. And then lastly, test it out. We want to prove it. to be a good plan for us so that we can maintain our integrity and deliver on our promises. So again, this is Money Monday. Thank you for joining us today as we talk about cash flow contingency planning. We're so excited about what God is doing in this season, and we're grateful for the opportunity to share. It's Monday Money, and we are learning through our lunchtime. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace and blessings.